Welcome to Goodnight Flagstaff. I'm Erica Fraley, a local book lover. I've always loved to read, and this program is a great way to share that love with others. Thank you for tuning in to our community storytime. You can find a new chapter from one of our favorite family-friendly books at 8 p.m. each weeknight on the Literacy Center's YouTube channel and on Creator Radio, a local online radio station. The previous chapter is replayed on Creator Radio each weeknight at about 7:30, just before the new chapter airs. You can also listen to all previous Goodnight Flagstaff recordings on YouTube. We are currently reading The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. If you'd like to check it out to read along with us at home, it is available at the library. Check one out today with your Coconino County Library card. Please email us if you'd like to join our team of readers and connect to your community through stories. All ages are welcome. Our email is goodnightflagstaff@gmail.com. Last time we read together, Sam pressed forward in his feeble attempt to rescue Frodo. Along the way, he had to wrestle with the power of the ring, and he resisted its temptation. And when he came to the Tower of Cirith Ungol, he used Lady Galadriel's Phial of Light to open the gates blocking his way. Of course, it set off the alarm, but he continued anyway. Once inside, he saw that the orcs had fought one another, and that almost all of them were dead. Do you think Frodo is also dead? Book 6, Chapter 1, The Tower of Cirith Ungol, Part 2. Up, up he went. It was dark save for an occasional torch flaring at a turn, or beside some opening that led into the higher levels of the tower. Sam tried to count the steps, but after 200 he lost his reckoning. He was moving quietly now, for he thought that he could hear the sound of voices talking, still some way above. More than one rat remained alive, it seemed. All at once, when he felt that he could pump out no more breath, nor force his knees to bend again, the stair ended. He stood still. The voices were now loud and clear. Sam peered out. He had climbed right to the flat roof of the third and highest tier of the tower, an open space, about 20 yards across, with a low parapet. There the stair was covered by a small domed chamber in the midst of the roof, with low doors facing east and west. Eastward, Sam could see the plain of Mordor, vast and dark below, and the burning mountain far away. A fresh turmoil was surging in its deep wells, and the rivers of fire blazed so fiercely that even at this distance of many miles, the light of them lit the tower top with a red glare. Westward, the view was blocked by the base of the great turret that stood at the back of this upper court and reared its horn high above the crest of the encircling hills. Light gleamed in a window slit. Its door was not 10 yards from where Sam stood. It was open but dark, and from just within its shadow the voices came. At first, Sam did not listen. He took a pace out of the eastward door and looked about. At once he saw that up here the fighting had been fiercest. All the court was choked with dead orcs, or their severed and scattered heads and limbs. The place stank of death. A snarl followed by a blow, and a cry sent him darting back into hiding. An orc voice rose in anger, and he knew it again at once, harsh, brutal, cold. It was Shagrat speaking, captain of the tower. "You won't go again, you say? Curse you, Snagga, you little maggot. If you think I'm so damaged that it's safe to flout me, you're mistaken. Come here, and I'll squeeze your eyes out, like I did to Radbug just now. And when some new lads come, I'll deal with you. I'll send you to Shelob." "They won't come, not before you're dead anyway," answered Snagga surlily. "I've told you twice that Gorbag's swine got to the gate first, and none of ours got out. Lagduff and Musgash ran through, but they were shot. I saw it from a window, I tell you, and they were the last. Then you must go. I must stay here anyway, but I'm hurt. The Black Pits take that filthy rebel Gorbag." Shagrat's voice trailed off into a string of foul names and curses. "I gave him better than I got, but he knifed me, the dung, before I throttled him. You must go, or I'll eat you. News must get through to the Lugburs, or we'll both be for the Black Pits. Yes, you too. You won't escape by skulking here." "I'm not going down those stairs again," growled Snagga. "Be you captain or no. Nar! Keep your hands off your knife, or I'll put an arrow in your guts. You won't be a captain long when they hear about all the goings-on. I fought for the tower against those stinking Morgul rats, but a nice mess you two precious captains have made of things, fighting over the swag." "That's enough from you," growled Shagrat. "I had my orders. It was Gorbag started it, trying to pinch that pretty shirt. Well, you put his back up, being so high and mighty, and he had more sense than you anyways. He told you that once the most dangerous of these spies was still loose, and you wouldn't listen. And you wouldn't listen now. Gorbag was right, I tell you. There's a great fighter about, one of those bloody-handed elves, or one of your filthy Tarks. He's coming here, I tell you. You heard the bell. He's got past the Watcher, and that's Tark's work. He's on the stairs, and until he's off them, I'm not going down. Not if you were a Nazgul, I wouldn't." "So that's it, is it?" yelled Shagrat. "You'll do this, and you'll not do that. And when he does come, you'll bolt and leave me. No, you won't. I'll put red maggot holes in your belly first." Out of the turret door, the smaller orc came flying. Behind him came Shagrat, a large orc with long arms that, as he ran crouching, reached to the ground. But one arm hung limp and seemed to be bleeding. The other hugged a large black bundle. In the red glare, Sam, cowering by the stair door, caught a glimpse of his evil face as it passed. It was scored as if by rending claws and smeared with blood. Slaver dripped from his protruding fangs. The mouth snarled like an animal. As far as Sam could see, Shagrat hunted Snagga around the roof until, ducking and eluding him, the smaller orc with a yelp darted back into the turret and disappeared. Then Shagrat halted. Out of the eastward door, Sam could see him now by the parapet, panting, his left claw clenching and unclenching feebly. He put the bundle on the floor, and with his right claw drew out a long red knife and spat on it. Going to the parapet, he leaned over, looking down into the outer court far below. Twice he shouted, but no answer came. Suddenly, as Shagrat was stooped over the battlement, his back to the rooftop, Sam, to his amazement, saw that one of the sprawling bodies was moving. It was crawling. It put out a claw and clutched the bundle. It staggered up, and its other hand held a broad-headed spear with a short, broken haft. It was poised for a stabbing thrust, but at that very moment a hiss escaped its teeth, a gasp of pain or hate. Quick as a snake, Shagrat slipped aside, twisted round, and drove his knife into his enemy's throat. "Got you, Gorbag," he cried. "Not quite dead, eh? Well, I'll finish my job now." He sprang onto the fallen body and stamped and trampled it in his fury, stooping now and again to stab and slash it with his knife. Satisfied at last, he threw back his head and let out a horrible, gurgling yell of triumph. Then he licked his knife and put it between his teeth, and catching up the bundle, he came loping towards the near door of the stairs. Sam had no time to think. He may have slipped out of the other door, but hardly without being seen, and he could not have played his hide-and-seek with this hideous orc for long. He did what was probably the best thing he could have done. He sprang out to meet Shagrat with a shout. He was no longer holding the ring, but it was there, a hidden power, a cowering menace to the slaves of Mordor. And in his hand was Sting, and its light smote the eyes of the orc like the glitter of cruel stars in the terrible elf countries, the dream of which was a cold fear to all his kind. And Shagrat could not both fight and keep hold of his treasure. He stopped, growling, baring his fangs. Then once more, orc fashion, he leapt aside, and as Sam sprang at him, using the heavy bundle as both a shield and weapon, he thrust it hard into his enemy's face. Sam staggered, and before he could recover, Shagrat darted past and down the stairs. Sam ran after him, cursing, but he did not go far. Soon the thought of Frodo returned to him, and he remembered that the other orc had gone back into the turret. Here was another dreadful choice, and he had no time to ponder it. If Shagrat got away, he would soon get help and come back. But if Sam pursued him, the other orc might do something horrible deed up there. And anyway, Sam might miss Shagrat or be killed by him. He turned quickly and ran back up the stairs. "Wrong again, I expect," he sighed. "But it's my job to go right up to the top first, whatever happens afterwards." Away below, Shagrat went leaping down the stairs and out over the court and through the gate, bearing his precious burden. If Sam could have seen him and known the grief that his escape would bring, he might have quailed. But now his mind was set on the last stage of his search. He came cautiously to the turret door and stepped inside. It opened into darkness, but soon his staring eyes were aware of a dim light at his right hand. It came from an opening that led to another stairway, dark and narrow. It appeared to go winding up the turret, along the inside of its round outer wall. A torch was glimmering from somewhere up above. Softly, Sam began to climb. He came to the guttering torch, fixed above a door on his left that faced a window slit, looking out westward. One of the red eyes that he and Frodo had seen from down below by the tunnel's mouth. Quickly Sam passed the door and hurried on to the second story, dreading at any moment to be attacked and to feel throttling fingers seize his throat from behind. He came next to a window looking east and another torch above the door to a passage through the middle of the turret. The door was open, the passage dark, save for the glimmer of the torch and the red glare from outside, filtering through the window slit. But here the stairs stopped and climbed no further. Sam crept into the passage. On either side there was a low door. Both were closed and locked. There was no sound at all. "A dead end," muttered Sam. "And after all my climb, this can't be the top of the tower. But what can I do now?" He ran back to the lower story and tried the door. It would not move. He ran up again, and sweat began to trickle down his face. He felt that even minutes were precious, but one by one they escaped, and he could do nothing. He cared no longer for Shagrat or Snagga, or any other orc that was ever spawned. He longed only for his master, for one sight of his face, or one touch of his hand. At last, weary and feeling finally defeated, he sat on a step below the level of the passage floor and bowed his head into his hand. It was quiet, horribly quiet. The torch, that was already burning low when he arrived, sputtered and went out, and he felt the darkness cover him like a tide. And then softly, to his own surprise, there at the vain end of his long journey and his grief, moved by what thought in his heart he could not tell, Sam began to sing. His voice sounded thin and quavering in the cold, dark tower, the voice of a forlorn and weary hobbit, that no listening orc could possibly mistake for the clear song of an elven lord. He murmured old childish tunes out of the Shire, and snatches of Mr. Bilbo's rhymes that came into his mind, like fleeting glimpses of the country of his home. And then suddenly new strength rose in him, and his voice rang out, while words of his own came unbidden to fit the simple tune. In western lands beneath the sun, the flowers may rise in spring. The trees may bud, the waters run, the merry finches sing. Or there may be 'tis cloudless night, and swaying beeches bare the elven stars as jewels white amid their branching hair. Though here at journey's end I lie, in darkness buried deep, beyond all towers strong and high, beyond all mountains steep, above all shadows rises the sun, and stars forever dwell. I will not say the day is done, nor bid the stars farewell. Beyond all towers high and strong, he began again, and then he stopped short. He thought he had heard a faint voice answering him, but now he could hear nothing. Yes, he could hear something, but not a voice. Footsteps were approaching. Now a door was being opened quietly in the passage above. The hinges creaked. Sam crouched down listening. The door closed with a dull thud, and then a snarling orc voice rang out. "Holla! You up there, you dunghill rat! Stop your squeaking, or I'll come and deal with you. Do you hear?" There was no answer. "All right," growled Snagga, "but I'll come and have a look at you all the same, and see what you're up to." The hinges creaked again, and Sam, now peering over the corner of the passage threshold, saw a flicker of light in an open doorway, and the dim shape of an orc coming out. He seemed to be carrying a ladder. Suddenly, the answer dawned on Sam. The utmost chamber was reached by a trap door in the roof of the passage. Snagga thrust the ladder upwards, steadied it, and then clambered out of sight. Sam heard a bolt drawn back. Then he heard the hideous voice speaking again. "You lie quiet, or you'll pay for it. You've not got long to live in peace, I guess. But if you don't want the fun to begin right now, keep your trap shut, see? That's a reminder for you." There was a sound like the crack of a whip. At that rage blazed in Sam's heart to a sudden fury. He sprang up, ran, and went to the ladder like a cat. His head came out in the middle of the floor of a round, large chamber. A red lamp hung from its roof. The westward window slit was high and dark. Something was lying on the floor by the wall under the window, but over it a black orc shape was straddled. It raised a whip a second time, but the blow never fell. With a cry, Sam leapt across the floor, sting in hand. The orc wheeled around, but before it could make a move, Sam slashed its whipped hand from its arm. Howling in pain and fear, but desperate, the orc charged head down at him. Sam's next blow went wide, and thrown off his balance, he fell backwards, clutching at the orc as it stumbled over him. Before he could scramble up, he heard a cry and a thud. The orc, in its wild haste, had tripped on the ladder head and fallen through the open trap door. Sam gave no more thought to it. He ran to the figure huddled on the floor. It was Frodo. He was naked, lying as if in a swoon on a heap of filthy rags. His arm was flung up, shielding his head, and across the side there ran an ugly whip wheel. "Frodo, Mr. Frodo, my dear," cried Sam, tears almost blinding him. "It's Sam, I've come." He lifted his master and hugged him to his breast. Frodo opened his eyes. "Am I still dreaming?" he muttered. "But the other dreams were horrible." "You're not dreaming, not dreaming at all, master," said Sam. "It's real. It's me. I've come." "I can hardly believe it," said Frodo, clutching him. "There was an orc with a whip, and then it turns into Sam. Then I wasn't dreaming after all when I heard the singing down below, and I tried to answer. Was it you?" "It was indeed, Mr. Frodo. I'd given up hope, almost. I couldn't find you." "Well, you have now, Sam. Dear Sam," said Frodo, as he lay back in Sam's gentle arms, closing his eyes, like a child at rest when night fears are driven away by some beloved voice or hand. Sam felt that he could sit like that in endless happiness, but it was not allowed. It was not enough for him to find his master. He had to still try and save him. He kissed Frodo's forehead. "Come, wake up, Mr. Frodo," he said, trying to sound as cheerful as he had when he drew back the curtains at Bag End on a summer's morning. Frodo sighed and sat up. "Where are we? How did I get here?" he asked. "There's no time for tales till we get somewhere else, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. "But you're in the top of that tower you and me saw from away down by the tunnel, before the orcs got you. How long ago that was, I don't know. More than a day, I guess." "Only that?" said Frodo. "It seems weeks. You must tell me about it if we get a chance. Something hit me, didn't it? And I fell into darkness and foul dreams, and woke and found that waking was worse. Orcs were all around me. I think that they had just been pouring some horrible burning drink down my throat. My head grew clear, but I was aching and weary. They stripped me of everything, and then two great brutes came and questioning me until I thought I should go mad, standing over me, gloating, fingering their knives. I'll never forget their claws and eyes." "You won't if you talk about them, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. And if we don't want to see them again, the sooner we get going, the better. Can you walk?" "Yes, I can walk," said Frodo, getting up slowly. "I am not hurt, Sam, only I feel very tired, and I have a pain here." He put his hand to the back of his neck above his left shoulder. He stood up, and it looked to Sam as if he was clothed in flame. His naked skin was scarlet in the light of the lamp above. Twice he paced across the floor. "That's better," he said, his spirits rising a little. "I didn't dare to move when I was left alone, or one of the guards came, until the yelling and the fighting began. The two big brutes, they quarreled, I think, over me and my things. I lay here terrified, and then all went deadly silent, and that was worse." "Yes, they quarreled, seemingly," said Sam. "There must have been a couple hundred of the dirty creatures in this place. A bit of a tall order for Sam Gamgee, as you might say. But they've done all the killing of themselves. That's lucky, but it's too long to make a song about, till we're out of here. Now what's to be done? You can't go walking into the Black Land and not but your skin, Mr. Frodo." "They've taken everything, Sam," said Frodo. "Everything I had. Do you understand? Everything." He cowered on the floor again, with a bowed head, as his own words brought him home to the fullness of the disaster, and despair overwhelmed him. "The quest has failed, Sam. Even if we get out of here, we can't escape. Only elves can escape. Away out of Middle-earth, far away over the sea, if even that is wide enough to keep the shadow out. No, not everything, Mr. Frodo. And it hasn't failed, not yet. I took it, Mr. Frodo, begging your pardon, and I've kept it safe. It's round my neck now, and a terrible burden it is, too. Sam fumbled for the ring and its chain. But I suppose you must take it back. And now it had come to it, Sam felt reluctant to give up the ring and burden his master with it again. You've got it? Gasped Frodo. You've got it here? Sam, you're a marvel. Then quickly and strangely his tone changed. Give it to me, he cried, standing up, holding a trembling hand. Give it to me at once. You can't have it. All right, Mr. Frodo, said Sam, rather startled. Here it is. Slowly he drew the ring out and passed the chain over his head. But you're in the land of Mordor now, sir, and when you get out, you'll see the fiery mountain all. You'll find the ring very dangerous now, and very hard to bear. If it's too hard a job, I could share it with you, maybe. No, no, cried Frodo, snatching the ring and chain from Sam's hands. No, you won't, you thief, he panted, staring at Sam with eyes wide, fear and enmity. Then suddenly, clasping the ring in one clenched fist, he stood aghast. A mist seemed to clear from his eyes, and he passed a hand over his aching brow. The hideous vision had seemed so real to him, half bemused, as he was still with the wound and fear. Sam had changed before his very eyes into an orc again, leering and pawing at his treasure, a foul little creature with greedy eyes and slobbering mouth. But now the vision had changed. There was Sam, kneeling before him, his face wrung with pain, as if he had been stabbed in the heart. Tears welled from his eyes. Oh, Sam, cried Frodo, what have I said? What have I done? Forgive me. After all you have done. It is the horrible power of the ring. I wish it had never, never been found. But don't mind me, Sam. I must carry the burden to the end. It can't be altered. You can't come between me and this doom. That's all right, Mr. Frodo, said Sam, rubbing his sleeve across his eyes. I understand. But I can still help, can't I? I've got to get you out of here. At once, see? But first, you want some clothes and gear and some food. The clothes will be the easiest part. As we're in Mordor, we'd best dress up Mordor fashion. And anyway, there isn't no choice. It'll still have to be orc stuff for you, Mr. Frodo, I'm afraid. And for me, too. If we go together, we'd best match. Now put this round you. Sam unclasped his grey cloak and cast it about Frodo's shoulders. Then, unslinging his pack, he laid it on the floor. He drew Sting from its sheath. Hardly a flicker was to be seen upon its blade. I was forgetting this, Mr. Frodo, he said. No, they didn't get everything. You lent me Sting, if you remember, and the lady's glass. I've got both them still. But lend them to me a little longer, Mr. Frodo. I must go and see what I can find. You stay here. Walk about a bit and ease your legs. I shan't be long. I shan't have to go far. Take care, Sam, said Frodo, and be quick. There may be orcs still alive, lurking in wait. I've got to chance it, said Sam. He stepped to the trap door and slipped down the ladder. In a minute his head reappeared. He threw a long knife on the floor. There's something that might be useful, he said. He's dead, the one that whipped you. Broke his neck, it seems, in his hurry. Now you draw up the ladder, if you can, Mr. Frodo, and don't let it down till you hear me call the password. Albereth, I'll say. What the elves say. No orc would say that. Frodo sat for a while and shivered, dreadful fears chasing one another through his mind. Then he got up, drew that grey elven cloak about him, and kept his mind occupied. Began to walk to and fro, prying and peering into every corner of his prison. It was not very long, though fear made it seem an hour at least, before he heard Sam's voice calling softly from below, Albereth, Albereth. Frodo let down the light ladder. Up came Sam, puffing, heaving a great bundle on his head. He let it fall with a thud. Quick now, Mr. Frodo, he said. I've had a bit of a search to find anything small enough for the likes of us. We'll have to make do, but we must hurry. I've met nothing alive, and I've seen nothing, but I'm not easy. I think this place is being watched. I can't explain it, but, well, it feels to me as if one of those foul flying riders is about, up in the blackness where he can't be seen. He opened the bundle. Frodo looked in disgust at the contents, but there was nothing for it. He had to put the things on or go naked. There were long, hairy breeches of some unclean beast fell, and a tunic of dirty leather. He drew them on. Over the tunic went a coat of stout ring mail, short for a full-size orc, too long for Frodo, and heavy. About it he clasped a belt, at which there hung a short sheath, holding a broad-bladed, stabbing sword. Sam had brought several orc helmets. One of them fit Frodo well enough, a black cap with iron rim, and iron hoops covered with leather, upon which the evil eye was painted in red above the beak-like nose guard. The Morgul stuff, Gorbag's gear, was a better fit and better made, said Sam. But it wouldn't do, I guess, to go carrying his tokens into Mordor, not after this business here. Well, there you are, Mr. Frodo, a perfect little orc, if I may make so bold. At least you would be, if we could cover your face with a mask, give you longer arms, and make you bow-legged. This will hide some of the telltales. He put a large black cloak round Frodo's shoulders. Now you're ready. You can pick up a shield as we go. What about you, Sam? Aren't we going to match? Well, Mr. Frodo, I've been thinking, said Sam. I'd best not leave any of my stuff behind, and we can't destroy it. And I can't wear orc mail over all my clothes, can I? I'll just have to cover up. He knelt down and carefully folded his elven cloak. It went into a surprisingly small roll. This he put into his pack that lay on the floor. Standing up, he slung it onto his back, put an orc helm on his head, and cast another black cloak around his shoulders. There, he said. Now we match, near enough. And now we must be off. I can't go all the way at a run, Sam, said Frodo with a wry smile. I hope you've made inquiries about the inns along the road, or have you forgotten about food and drink? Save me, but so I had, said Sam. He whistled in dismay. Bless me, Mr. Frodo, but you've gone and made me that hungry and thirsty. I don't know when a drop or morsel last passed my lips. I'd forgotten it trying to find you, but let me think. Last time I had looked, I'd gotten about enough of that way bread, and of what Captain Faramir gave us, to keep me on my legs for a couple of weeks at a pinch. But if there's a drop left in my bottle, there's no more. And that's not going to be enough for two, no how. Don't orcs eat, and don't they drink? Or do they just live on foul air and poison? No, they eat and drink, Sam. The shadow that bred them can only mock. It cannot make. Not real new things of its own. I don't think it gave life to the orcs. It only ruined them and twisted them. And if they are to live at all, they have to live like other living creatures. Foul waters and foul meats they'll take if they can get no better, but not poison. They fed me, and so I'm better off than you. There must be food and water somewhere in this place. But there's no time to look for them, said Sam. Well, things are a bit better than you think, said Frodo. I've had a bit of luck while you were away. Indeed, they did not take everything. I found my food bag among some rags on the floor. They rummaged it, of course, but I guess they disliked the very look and smell of the lembas, worse than Gollum did. It's scattered about, and some of it's trampled and broken, but I've gathered it together. It's not far short of what you've got, but they've taken Faramir's food, and they slashed my water bottle. Well, there's no more to be said, said Sam. We've got to start on, but the water's going to be bad business. But come, Mr. Frodo, off we go, or a whole lake of it won't do us any good. Not till you've had a mouthful, Sam, said Frodo. I won't budge. Here, take this elven cake, and drink that last drop of your bottle. The whole thing is quite hopeless, so it's no good worrying about tomorrow. It probably won't come. At last they started. Down the ladder they climbed, and then Sam took it and laid it in the passage beside the huddled body of the fallen orc. The stair was dark, but on the rooftop the glare of the mountain could still be seen, though it was dying down now to a sullen red. They picked up 2 shields to complete their disguise and went on. Down the great stairway they plodded. The high chamber of the turret behind, where they had met again, seemed almost homely. They were out in the open again now, and terror ran through the walls. All might be dead in the tower of Cirith Ungol, but it was steeped in fear and evil still. At length they came to the door upon the outer court, and they halted. Even from where they stood they felt the malice of the watchers beating on them, black, silent shapes on either side of the gate, through which the glare of Mordor dimly showed. As they threaded their way among the hideous bodies of the orcs, each step became more difficult. Even before they reached the archway, they were brought to a stand. To move an inch further was a pain and weariness to will and limb. Frodo had no strength for such a battle. He sank to the ground. I can't go on, Sam, he muttered. I'm going to faint. I don't know what's come over me. I do, Mr. Frodo. Hold up now. It's the gate. There's some devilry here. But I got through, and I'm going to get out. It can't be more dangerous than before. Now for it. Sam drew out the elven glass of Galadriel again. As if to do honor to his hardihood, and to grace with splendor his faithful brown hobbit hand that had done such deeds, The fire blazed forth suddenly, so that all the shadowy court was lit with a dazzling radiance like lightning, but it remained steady and did not pass. Gulthaniel Elbereth, Sam cried. For, why he did not know, his thoughts sprang back suddenly to the elves in the Shire, and the song that drove away the black riders in the trees. Aya, Elnian, and Kalma, cried Frodo, once again behind him. The will of the watchers was broken, with a suddenness like the snapping of a cord, and Frodo and Sam stumbled forward. Then they ran, through the gate and past the great seated figures with their glittering eyes. There was a crack. The keystone of the arch crashed almost on their heels, and the wall above crumbled and fell in ruin. Only by a hair did they escape. A bell clanged, and from the watches there went up a high and dreadful wail. Far above in the darkness it was answered. Out of the black sky there came a dropping like a bolt, a winged shape, rending the clouds with a ghastly shriek. Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time for the first part of Chapter 2, Book 7, of The Return of the King. Good night, Flagstaff.